Welcome to Blender. In this video, we're going to optimize our cup for Second Life by removing some geometry, marking seams, unwrapping and optimizing texture space by arranging UV islands, texturing the model, baking it, and getting it uploaded to Second Life. So I know that seems like a lot, but it's really not that much. It's just a lot of steps. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and select our cup. You can also select it in the outliner and hit period on the number pad to get zoomed in on it. So let's go into edit mode, and the first thing we're going to do is the straw part. So if you select a vertex and you hit L on another vertex up here and a vertex down here, you can select both of those and hit H to hide them. And that gives us our straw. So our straw's got a lot of geometry. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of some of that. So if you hit 2 on the keyboard and Alt-Z to go into X-ray mode, let's go ahead and switch this to solid view. That way we can see what's going on. So if we hit Alt-Z, we can box select this and do a checker deselect by hitting select at the top and checker deselect. Once we have that done, we can hit X and dissolve edges. Then we can do one more checker deselect by selecting those, checker deselect, and X and dissolve edges one more time, and that reduces the geometry down pretty far for us. So now we're going to go Alt-Z and face select mode by hitting 3, and we're going to select the bottom face and the top face, and we're going to inset it just a little bit, right click, loop tools, bridge, and that gives us the inside of our straw. Because the way it was, if you would have uploaded it into Second Life, you just had a flat top up here, and if you delete the flat top, then you'd see through the straw, and we don't want to do that. So that's the optimization of the polygons. So now we're going to hit 2 and go in edge select mode and hold Alt and select both of these edges, and then flip her down to the bottom and shift select both of those edges with shift and Alt and clicking, and we're going to right click, mark seams, and then we need one edge, so we'll go ahead and select one edge, right click, mark seams. So, and then one on the inside, so one more edge, right click, mark seams. So that's the seams marked for the straw part. To get us back out of the hide mode, we just hit Alt H, and that'll bring the rest of the cup back. And let's go to this part. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the straw, and so hit L on the straw and L on the bottom of the cup, and hit H to hide those. And we are going to go into edge select and Alt select this edge, and we'll go ahead and mark that seam. And now we're going to inset just a little bit and extrude it up. And then we're just going to delete that face. So X faces. So now our cup wraps around, but it stops there and it's got seams marked. We honestly don't need this seam, so if you want to get rid of a seam, you can right click or Alt left click it and right click clear seam. So that seam's gone. It doesn't need a seam because it's not connected to any geometry other than the bottom part, so it'll just be one piece anyway. So that's it for the top of the cup. So we hit Alt H, and we'll go ahead and hit L on the lid of the cup and L on the straw, and we'll hide those. The top of the cup we don't need at all, so hit 3 to go to face select, select the top, and we'll just delete that face. And that leaves us the rest of the cup. If you plan on just setting the cup on something, you can delete this face. If you want to actually script it and animate it and have yourself holding it, don't delete it, because then when they lift the cup up, you'll see through it. So depending on what you want to do, you can go ahead and remove or keep that. So to mark the edges, if you're in face select mode, you can hit Control E and bring up the edge select menu and mark seam, because right click mark seam doesn't work when you're in face select mode. So I'm going to hit 2 to go into edge select mode and grab an edge and right click, mark seam, and that's the seams marked for the cup. So if we hit Alt H, we can unhide it, and we're ready to unwrap this. Okay, so we have our cup on seams marked. Now we need to unwrap this guy. So we are going to jump into UV editing. It's at the top here. And over on the right side, if we have our cup selected, so we just hit period on number pad to zoom in on it and then back up off of it a little bit. And we're going to hit A in this right window, and U is the shortcut for UV mapping, and that gives us our unwrap stuff. So if you click unwrap, you'll get this, which isn't a horrible unwrap. You also have your operator panel down here, and you can give a margin a little bit if you want to. That way they are not close together. But that's going to change in a minute anyway. Maybe it won't. So first thing we need to do, this is crooked, and if it's crooked like that, the texture's not going to lay on it. If you have a straight texture on a crooked mesh, it's just going to be crooked. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to straighten this guy out. So if you select two vertices, and the x-axis is the left and right axis, and the vertical axis is the y-axis. So we're going to scale on the x by 0. So SX0 and left click. And let me open this up for you to show you this a little better. And then we want to select the same two over here, SX0, and this is aligning those perfectly straight on the x-axis, well, vertically. And then we want to select the top two and do an SY0, and then the bottom two, SY0, and that makes this square perfectly straight. So we'll hit 3 to go into face select and select this face, and it's perfectly square. Now if we hit L on this thing, that one's highlighted, the whole thing's selected, and we can go to right click, follow active quads, and ta-da, perfectly square. Okay, so now that we have this UV map all arranged and straightened out, we're going to hit Control Space and take it back down smaller. Anywhere you click Control Space, it makes the window full screen wherever you have your mouse positioned. Whoops. Okay, so now we need to arrange these islands how we want to put them. So this island is clearly sideways because all the geometry is going up and down, and that's not up and down. So if we select this edge, we can't tell what we're selected because we have sync turned off. So if we turn sync on, it selects everything, and if we deselect it and select this edge, it'll show us over here what we have selected, but we may have to hit X-ray mode, so Alt-Z in this window, and you can see that that is the top edge. So we want to turn this to put the top edge at the top. In order to do that, you have to turn sync back off, because if you select everything, it selects another part. So if we turn sync off and hit A so that we can see everything, then we can select, select this island and rotate it 90 degrees, but I'm going to hit the 9 to see which way it's going to turn, and it's turning to the right, so that's going to put our part to the top. So I'm just going to hit 0 for 90 and finish out the operation. So now I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to move it up here out of the way for the time being. This part, I know this is the top of the cup, but we can check it by turning sync off and hitting L on it, and you can see that it's the top. So turn sync back off, go over here, hit A to see everything, select a vertex on there and hit L, and hit G, and we're going to move it up here in line with our other part. We also need the top of the outside of the straw to be up here with this, because we want to use as much texture space for the parts that we're going to see as we can, and the rest of the stuff we can shrink down and just put in the window somewhere. So I believe this is the top one. So I'm going to select it. Well, it doesn't matter if you select it. Turn sync on, select it, double check it. I'm going to hit Alt-Z, and that is the outside. So we can take that, and let's go ahead and select that. That's the top, so we know that's the top of it. So if we select it, turn sync on, go ahead and hit A over here to see everything again. Make sure nothing else is selected. Hit R, 90, and we're going to move that up here. The rest of this stuff is is the bottom of the cup and the underneath of the cup and the inside of the straw. So we can just kind of arrange it how we want to arrange it. So I'm going to grab that, move it here. I'm going to hit L on this, move it up, get it kind of square. I'm going to grab these two little parts, make sure I got all of it. I do. Move it here and scale it up a little bit and just kind of make a square out of that. So I'm going to box select all that and move it out of the way. Now I'm going to select this one and bring it to the bottom here and scale it up to give it more texture space, because we want every pixel we can for better texture quality. And we're going to move this down here. Make sure you don't have nothing coming outside of the UV grid, and make sure nothing's overlapping, because they will bake black when we go to bake our textures in a little bit. This part, we can scale all this down to fit, so I'm just going to move it here, scale it down, and that looks pretty good. A little bit. There we go. So now that's a really nice UV map. That makes this object good for selling full perm. So people can take this into Photoshop and put their own textures on there how they want to put them on and make it look really nice. Or you can do that yourself also after we bake our textures. So now that we have the seams marked and this thing all unwrapped and the UVs placed where we want to place them, using as much texture space as possible, now we can put some textures on this thing. So if we go up here to the shading tab and click that, we come up with our materials. So first thing I want to do is name my materials. So the pink one is the cup, so we'll name it cup. The second one is the lid, so we'll name it lid. And the third one is a straw, so we'll name it straw. We also have the wrong material on the inside of the straw, so I'm going to select the cup and hit tab to go into edit mode. And I'm going to go into face select mode by hitting 3 on the number pad or clicking that button up there. And if you hold Alt and click on one of the edges inside the cup, it'll select the whole inside of the edge loop. And we can go to straw and go ahead and assign that material to it, and it turns yellow. So I'm going to click on the first material, which is the cup. And if you're not seeing the colors, just go up here to the top bar and scroll and go from solid view to material preview, and that'll let you see your colors. If we select the green node, which is the principal BSDF, and you have Node Wrangler installed and your use nodes checked, you can just hit Control T, and that's a Node Wrangler function, and it brings up some mapping nodes for you. So it brings up an image texture node, mapping coordinates node, and a texture coordinates node. So it's selecting the UV, which tells it to use our UVs. It gives us location, rotation, and scale of our texture, and a place to bring textures in or make new materials yourself. So if we click open, I'm just going to go to miscellaneous, and I'm going to use this space texture, and it puts it on there. If you turn off your overlays, which is this button here, it'll get rid of the lines, but you honestly don't need this in edit mode, so we can just tab to back to object mode. And that puts our texture on there, and then you can scale it by holding your middle mouse over top of the X in the middle and left clicking and dragging down, and that'll do all three of them, and hold your left click down still, and you can move left and right and scale the texture accordingly. And when you get a size you like, you can just stop. So you can also scale textures a different way, and that's by going to the UV editing tab and hitting A. And if we select, okay, the material is selected, we can click this and put the material on there. And it's only affecting the cup part, which is this bottom part here. So if we hit L on it and go up to material preview and turn our overlays back off, you can see it on there. And if you scale it, it also scales the size of the texture. So the smaller you make it, the worse the quality. And the bigger you make it, the better the quality. So that's why we arranged the UVs like we did. Back into the shading tab. So that's our first material. Our second material is our lid. Select the principal BDSF or BSDF and Control T. Grab our mapping node and move it up so we can see all the connections. Click open and find yourself another texture. I'm going to use this orange one. And that laid on there pretty good. If it's not a seamless texture and you scale it, you may end up with a line. You can move the texture around or resize it to try to fix that line. I'll get into how to fix that stuff a little better later with the UVs and everything, but for now, just make sure you don't have a line on your cup anywhere, and you can move the locations and scales to make that fit. The last one we're going to do is the straw, so select the material over here, and every time you select one of these, that changes what's down here. So select our principal BSDF, Control T, line it up a little better, open, and I've downloaded a texture for this one in our textures thing. I'm going to use that one. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to scale the x-axis in a little bit. Yeah, I like that. So that's how you apply the textures to your materials once you have them made. Okay, so we have all these textures applied to our model. Now we need some lighting so we can bake these guys. So let's jump back into the layout tab or modeling tab. I'm gonna go to layout though, I like layout. And we need to turn on cycles and get it into rendered mode and add some lighting. So to do cycles, you go over to this render properties tab, which is the second one, and click it, and Eevee doesn't do baking. So we're going to change Eevee to cycles, and we're going to change device from CPU to GPU compute. And if you don't have this menu, you can check your edit preferences system and make sure you have the CUDA turned on to use your processor and your video card, and that'll give you this GPU compute option. Okay, so now that we have cycles ready to show us our lighting and shadows and all that stuff, we need to be able to see it in the scene. So if you go to the top, we've been using solid and material preview. Now we're going to use cycles or viewport shading. So that gives us lighting, and we still have a light and a camera in the scene, but I'm going to delete those two guys. Shift C to put the 3D cursor back to where it belongs. And I'm just going to move the cup. Actually, you know what? I'm going to right click, set origin to geometry, which puts our point of origin back in the center of the cup. And now I'm going to shift S and move selection to cursor, which is going to put the cup there. And I'm going to hit 1 on the number pad and period on the number pad. And I'm going to hit G and Z and control, and I'm going to move this guy up to about there. I let go of control so I could just slide it there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm going to make a plane. So shift A, mesh, plane, and that'll give us a floor underneath our cup. And I'm going to scale it up a little bigger and hit shift A and add some lighting. So shift A, go to light and go to area, and GZ and move the light up. And I like to make the light real big, so I'm going to hit S and scale the light real big. There's a lot of better ways to light things. This is just a quick, dirty, easy way, and I do it for almost all my models because I'm lazy. Go to lighting, and you can crank this thing to like, I don't know, 20,000. That's too much. Probably because I'm used to working at bigger items. I'm cranking this up. Let's try 2,000. See what it does. That's a little better. So that gives us a shadow. It lights our cup. You can play with the lighting and stuff. I'm going to turn the lighting down a little bit. Okay, down a lot. Till you're happy with the lighting. And if you watch, you can see it rendering. What it's rendering here is in the renders tab. In the viewport, the max samples is 1024. So if I move this, you can see it says 1024 and then it renders. And when it's done, it's done. So that's quick and dirty lighting. If you plan on holding this cup and people seeing the bottom of it, you don't want the floor so close to the bottom. So we're going to move the floor down, because if you do, and when you bake your textures, you're not going to be able to see the bottom of it. It's going to be black because it's sitting against the floor and no light's hitting it. So now the light is bouncing off the floor onto the underneath of the cup, and it'll bake nice. So to bake this object, if you go to back to the shading tab and hit period on numpad to find your cup. There we go. And we're going to start with the top one, which is the cup. And over here, I'm going to hit Shift A, Texture, Image Texture. But before you click on Image Texture, go ahead and right click and add it to your quick favorites. That way you can hit Q and just add an image texture. Okay. Now we need a new one, so I'm going to click New, and I'm going to name it Cup Bake. Turn off the alpha and click OK. Now we want to make a copy of this for each one of these. So we right click on it and copy it. Select the lid, put your mouse where you want it, and hit Control V and paste that sucker in there. Do the same with the straw, Control V, and now all three materials are baking to the same image. So this is the image that we're baking to, that we saved, that we upload to Secondlife to put on our model. And all three of them need to have it in there, and they all three need to be selected. So you have to make sure your cup is selected. And I'm not talking here, I'm talking the actual cup. And then when you click cup here, you need to make sure this image node's selected, because if you have this one selected, you'll bake over top of it. So make sure this is selected. Select your lid, make sure it's selected. Select your straw, make sure your image is selected the third time, and then we can go back to the rendering tab. So select your rendering tab, and under render, viewport and render are not the same thing. So 1024 here is not what you're baking. We don't want to bake 4096. We want to bake something like 512. So 512 samples is plenty. And then if you scroll down, you'll find the bake tab. And if you click that, you have a bake option. And as long as those things are selected properly, you can go ahead and click bake. And that'll take a second. And as soon as it's done, it pops up over here with your bake. So if I hit Control Space here, you can see that's the top lid of our cup. That is our straw. That's our whole side of the cup. This distorted edge around here is why we leave a margin in between our UVs. That way it doesn't bleed over into the actual image. And that bake looks great. So I'm going to Control Space to get back out of there. To save the image, you go here to these three little bars, and you click down, and if you look, image has a little asterisk beside it. So you can click image and just save as. Choose a place to save it. So I'm going to go to desktop. Where's my Blender folder at? There it is, Blender. And I'm going to go to the cup. And cup PNG, bake PNG is fine, and I'm just going to save it. And that's it. Now we can upload this cup to Secondlife and apply our texture to it, and it'll look great. Okay, we got our textures baked, or our one texture baked, and now we need to export it because we changed some stuff and get her into Secondlife. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the cup, and we're going to go up to Object, Apply, All Transforms, and if you've already done the quick favorites, you can hit Q and just do All Transforms. And that'll get your cup straightened out. Remember, I want to hit N and make sure the size is right. So go to Item and check the size, and the scale is applied. The size is a good size. We're going to go back to Solid View and check our face orientation, make sure nothing's red, but it baked properly, so everything should be fine. You should check the face orientation before you bake, because it will bake black if it's not blue. We'll turn face orientations back off. and it's ready to be exported. So File, Export, Collada, and I'm gonna go up one because I know that puts me in here. Go to Cup. We already have a DAE, but we're making a new one. So we're gonna name this Cup 2, and we'll do operator preset SL OpenSim static. That does our selection only. We're going to uncheck the copy textures and export Collada to the cup file. Now we can jump into Secondlife and go to build, upload, mesh model, desktop. Where's my Blender file at? There it is. You go to cup DA2. I'm going to leave all this alone. Make sure it's named cup or whatever you want to name it. Go to the physics tab, click the drop down, and if you're in Firestorm, you get the cube here. So go to cube, check it out, looks good. Back to level of detail, calculate weights and fees, and it's coming in at half a land impact and 11 upload fee. So go ahead and hit upload, and I can grab my cup and res it out, and it's teeny tiny. So I'm gonna zoom in on it. I'm gonna edit it, go to the texture tab, and make sure my color is white because I want it white. Now we can hit the plus sign, upload, image, and there's our cup bake. I don't know. Oh, it's on the desktop. That's why I saved the desktop. And double click it. Click OK or upload, and it'll upload it. And there's my cup bake. And now we can just drag this in. That puts that part on, and the lid, and the straw. And there's our cup. Looks pretty good. If you don't like the bake and it's not bright enough, you can go back into Blender and turn up the light down here. So select your light, go to lighting, turn the power up, and then go back to the shading tab and select the cup, back to the materials tab, double check. These all should be fine. You should just be able to go back to render and bake, but double check, make sure the cup's selected and all three bake textures are selected. Go back to rendering, scroll back down, click bake, and it'll rebake it, then resave it, then re-upload it to Secondlife, and it'll be a little brighter after you change the lighting. So if you click the light again, you can just crank up the lighting until it looks good. Make sure you're in rendered so you can see what's going on. And that's it for this video. Hope you guys had fun, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Thanks.